Great.
All right. So hi, everyone. Welcome to Jessica's Zoom Artist Talk, along with all of her speakers. We're going to be talking about the Wilderness Diaries and some of the work that her and the organization do. This video is being recorded, so if you're not comfortable with that, feel free to turn your video off. We just want to be able to share this video afterwards and all the work that goes on behind the scenes. We're going to hear from 3 speakers as well as Jessica herself today. The Roxbury Arts Group is really pleased to exhibit this beautiful work. We have 9 portraits up in the gallery for a few more weeks, so I really push you guys to come see them yourself, because art is best seen in person. It's never the same on a screen. And see all the wonderful things that are on the wall from Jessica's aunt of her time dealing with bipolar disorder and her experiences on that, because there's some really wonderful words that her aunt has wrote. And I have Jessica here. So Jessica is a painter who grew up in Southern Indiana. She studied at the School of Visual Arts in New York City and currently resides in Delaware County, New York. Her paintings explore the vast landscape, verdant forest, and abundant wildlife, and the people who live in her community. As a mental health advocate, Farrell is interested in themes that speak to the power and fragility of the human condition and provoke public discourse. We have with us Kate Hewlett, who has a strong and diverse work history with advocacy and peer support for individuals with mental health diagnosis. And as a New York State certified peer specialist, Kate has advocated for the rights and inclusion of those who struggle with bureaucratic, governmental, and healthcare systems. Some of Kate's passions include writing, reading, being in nature, meditating, dancing, baking, artistry craft projects, and spending quality time with friends and family, as well as volunteering and listening to music. We also have Michael, who joined us at the last minute. Welcome, Michael. And he's a recent transplant from New York City, having just moved to Margaretville. Michael grew up in a home clouded by addiction and mental illness and spent 34 years battling drug and alcohol abuse, as well as depression, OCD, and ADD. In May of 2003, he entered into recovery treatment program in Minnesota, and after many years of AA/NA meetings and counseling, he has remained sober since then. Michael has recently retired from the financial services industry to focus on his painting and hopes to become an integral part of the mental illness and recovery community here in upstate New York. We also have Ariana, who is a peer that lives in Otsego County and works at a rehabilitative supportive services in Oneonta, living with the intention of bringing kindness and love to every interaction. Her educational goal is to complete her degree at SUNY Oneonta and work with survivors of domestic violence and trauma, using her own life experiences with mental illness and trauma as an inspiration for growth, wisdom, and healing. How do you say the last name, Ariana? I'm going to do it wrong.
Healing, not hearing.
Healing, sorry. And
it's Ilowit.
Ilowit is also an artist who explores all forms of creativity, from painting and illustration to jewelry crafting and card making, with her biggest passion being painting, where she channels her pain into artwork with the hope of uplifting others and herself. We also have Bill Hayes. He is the affluent leader of the National Alliance of Mental Health and Illness and Delaware and Otsego. Sorry, Jessica, I thought there was more on that side. Did I cover it all?
Thank you, Samantha. Appreciate it.
Now let's see if I can do this again.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jessia Farrell. Thank you for attending. I hope all of you are well, despite COVID isolation and our wild winter weather here in New York. Thank you, Samantha and Jenny and the Roxbury Arts Group for this opportunity to talk about art, mental health, and recovery. The Wilderness Diary consists of 9 portraits, a companion book that tells the story of each person I painted, and an audio recording of my aunt's writings. If you haven't had a chance to see the exhibition, I invite you to stop in the lovely Walt Mead Gallery in Roxbury, New York. The show is up until March 5th. I live in Delaware County. The bucolic vistas and rugged, enigmatic landscape of my home became the backdrop for my paintings. Delaware County is a large rural county in the Western Catskill Mountains. We have some of the best skies. I tried to capture them in my work. I didn't want to paint suffering. Instead, I used dramatic, foreboding skies and the person's expression as a way to subtly communicate inner turmoil. The portraits are from about the waist up and they are near life size. I paint on acrylic on wood panel. I love the feel of wood as I prefer a very clean, crisp line. I have always been fascinated by religious icons, which are painted on wood. And other influences would include the Hudson River painters, Frida Kahlo, and the surrealist painter Leonora Carrington. I use vintage frames in this series as they hark back to an earlier era, just as the people I painted reflect on their past. Plus, I'm fascinated with old stuff, oddball items, antiques, and curiosities. I grew up in a home filled with these types of items, and it's contagious because I now am collecting the same stuff. So the Wilderness Diary is centered on stories of struggle and recovery. I felt these stories were really important and needed to be heard. I have a family connection to mental illness. In an effort to better understand my family, I joined my local NAMI chapter, the National Alliance on Mental Illness of Delaware and Otsego County. It's a grassroots organization dedicated to building better lives for Americans affected by mental illness. We have a wonderful local chapter and many people are here today, so thank you for coming out. I was always captivated by powerful stories of recovery. One of those stories belonged to my Aunt Barbara. Several years ago, she sent me the diary she kept as a young woman struggling with bipolar disorder in the 1960s and 70s. She hoped her journey could help others. Barbara was the cool aunt and animal lover that let my sisters and me stay up late listening to records. She was spontaneous, funny, and full of adventure. She kept a canister filled with candy, bazooka bubble gum, atomic fireballs, and licorice rope by the yard. Barbara loved dogs, and staying at her home in Boonville, Indiana was really a kid's dream come true. Growing up, I never knew about Barbara's struggles. I didn't know she had been in and out of the hospital. She just seemed like the best aunt in the world. But later, Barbara started sharing her story with me. She sent me her writings and photographs of herself as a young girl. The images did not reveal the mental unrest that would hold her captive on and off for years. Her writings exposed an alternate narrative that haunted my imagination, and this was the jumping off point for my work. Initially, it was hard to read Barbara's writings. They seemed to be frantic letters from the edge of a tormented dream world. Some were handwritten, some were typed, some were just kind of rambles written in rhyme or backwards. Others were heartfelt passages of a young woman desperately trying to maintain her sanity. In talking with my aunt, it was clear that the 14 shock treatments she'd received in 1966 were at the center of her story. However, my aunt was very lucky. She was able to recover. She worked in manufacturing most of her life. When she retired, her dream became a reality. She opened Trademark Kennel, a successful dog kennel. She had many loyal clients and many four-legged friends. At last, she was in her element. A selection of my aunt's journal entries are displayed in the gallery at Roxbury. I'll read part of an entry from her diary now. April 1966. A short hissing sound and it's all over, my first shock treatment, that is. I am wheeled back to my room by the aide and put into my bed. When breakfast arrives, I'm awakened, groggy and disoriented. I get up and go into the dining room and get my tray. I sit trying to recall who I am, where I am, why I am. My memory seems quite blank and I feel removed from what's happening around me. This was the first of 14 shock treatments. After having more, my memory seemed to get worse, although it did improve in time. What's it like to spend a day, a week, a month in the psychiatric wing of a hospital? It all ends up being rather a bore. You arise in the morning, there's coffee to drink while you wait for breakfast to arrive. Breakfast time is also pill time. Then it's the big wait, time to see your doctor. The time you spend inside the office varies anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes. Conversation with the doctor was possible for me. Frequently, I took in drawings or writings. I spent a lot of time pacing and looking out the window. I was not sure why I'd voluntarily committed myself, but at that very moment, I was quite sane and free of any mental hangups whatsoever. I was a hummingbird. All I needed to do was to hover, 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 and recover. Somehow my doctor did not exactly agree with me. I spent 3 months of my 21st year in the psychiatric wing of a hospital. So, you know, she sent me this stack of material. It was very well organized. You know, it's really hard to read it initially because it was kind of clashing with the aunt that I knew. But the great thing about my aunt is she had this amazing sense of humor. So we had a lot of conversations about what she had written. You know, she wrote to her doctor, to Charles Baudelaire. She, you know, I think she fancied herself a writer. And so I just was really honored that she shared this material with me. So, and she was able to recover and live a very interesting life. I'm just really grateful to be part of that. So beyond my aunt, I knew there were other stories that needed to be heard. It was important for me to shed light on the quiet, powerful stories of recovery I'd heard in a NAMI program called In Our Own Voice. I reached out to my friends that I'd worked with in the community, and thankfully they were very willing and graciously shared a very vulnerable chapter in their life. Despite living with a mental health condition, my friends advocate for people struggling today. Many work as peer recovery specialists, meaning they use their own lived experience of recovery to support others that need help. And for me, you know, I just really think of them as heroes because it's, you know, there's still a lot of stigma out there. And so, you know, just that they meet with people, different community groups, families, it's really inspiring. And I heard Kate speak, and then I was open up to many more speakers and just amazed. So the companion book to the painting series actually shares each person's story. Why did I paint young people? Because many mental illnesses start to present at that time. Each person I painted sent me old photographs and snapshots. And I think revisiting this time in their life, it was, you know, it was emotional. And so, you know, that was something that I didn't really take into consideration until I started talking to some of my friends. Ultimately, adolescence is a time of vulnerability, but it's also a time of possibility. I guess by painting young people, I'm asking, what can we do as a society to change the course of this person's struggle? And as with so many things in life, if we can get support earlier rather than later, we usually can have a better outcome. So, and less suffering. So that was really that was very important to me. Why did I paint animals? I grew up in a family of animal lovers, including my aunt. Her connection with dogs was really integral to her recovery. And I chose a fox for Barbara because that's actually the family name. So it's actually on that side of the family, it's two animals. We have a fox and a crane. So, so no wonder they like animals. And when I thought of painting all these young people, they'd all endured, you know, just a real life crisis at such a young age. It seemed necessary that they not be alone in their painting, so the animal was somewhat a companion. And why I chose the particular animal for each person, sometimes it had something to do with their story, but sometimes it was just a feeling I got about the person, and you know, an animal came to mind in the scene. So, and also important to me with this series is advocacy. So the work is a reflection on our mental health crisis. 1 in 5 adults live with a mental health condition. Misconceptions, stigmas, and lack of funding for services has had a profound effect on communities everywhere. Rural America has been especially hit hard. There are chronic shortages of mental health professionals. People must travel long distances to services, especially here in Delaware County. There's shame and stigma that can create barriers. Psychiatric wards are closing left and right. That's certainly happening in this community as well. Also, crisis response calls are often handled by the police. Since COVID, the volume of mental health calls has skyrocketed. We really need to have more training about crisis response. It's a very complex issue, but we have had some tragedies here locally, and I'm very concerned about that. Here in Delaware County, we have one of the highest suicide rates in New York State. 80% of the inmates in our county jail have some form of mental illness. Jail is certainly not the place for recovery. People, they don't get medication, and they certainly don't get the care they need. We live in a society that locks up people with a medical condition because we really have no better alternative. In 2017, a group of advocates and I formed the Mental Health Justice Project. We are greatly concerned about people with mental illnesses who come into contact with the criminal justice system. Ultimately, the Wilderness Diary is about triumph over adversity. I wanted to spread a message of hope. Yes, recovery is possible. You can see it in my friends and the people who will speak here today. My aunt and my friends, you know, they persevered. I also wanted to sound an alarm because our society can do better for people with these kinds of struggles. Mental illness is a facet of the human condition. Creativity itself is an irrational voyage. And I know that because when I make things, and as anyone who is a maker, you know, our mind is kind of, we open up to a lot of possibilities. So it is kind of an irrational voyage. So I just hope my work helps others understand that they're not alone and that there is hope. So that's, you know, I appreciate you listening. And now I'd like to introduce my friends that I painted. And I'm really grateful to them. This is just a few of the people that I painted, and unfortunately Garrett Smith could not make it today, and Michael Reichman, a peer, the advocate with NAMI, will tell his story. So I'd like you to welcome Kate Hewlett, Michael Reichman, and Ariana Illawa. And first we will hear from Kate. So thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this. Jessica's a very good friend of mine. So basically my story begins, from birth, and I'm not going to start there because it's a long journey. But basically at 2 weeks before my 22nd birthday, I was hospitalized and I received a psychiatric diagnosis, and the psychiatrist told me at that point, he literally said, "Your life is over." And then he proceeded to give me a long list of things that I would not do in my life. And one of those included living in society under normative expectations. So to this day, I still have no clue what that even means. But regardless, it didn't help in any way. It did such harm, and it made me feel worthless. It made me feel less than human. It was just not a very good experience. And I realized at that point, I had this anger. Once I moved through like the sadness and all this, I had this anger. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna prove him wrong. I'm gonna prove him wrong. And so to fast forward how I did this within the peer movement, I had the honor of listening to 3 days worth of Steve Michio, who is the CEO of People USA in Poughkeepsie, New York. And that's when I think I met some of the NAMI folks for the first time. And he talked about peer work and his white paper on peer work and the Rose House and all this great stuff. And at the end of the 3 days, I went up to him and I said, "We have no non-clinical peer support services in Otsego County. How do I start a support group?" And he just said, "Just by doing 2 simple things. You find a free place to meet and you advertise, and people will come." And I was really surprised. I was really shocked. That's exactly what happened. So, the group was small in the beginning, and we just met in a church and we just talked. We just, supported each other. And I had no clue what I was doing as a facilitator. No idea, but it was a very organic group, and it grew. We were meeting every week, and that led to me working in supported employment, providing peer support services at the Mountain View Wellness Center, which led to my first full-time job at the age of 37 or 38 at the Otsego County Behavioral Health Services Adult Outpatient Clinic. And that was really great. I did a lot of advocacy, on the systems level, like on the county level, the regional level, as well as on the individual level, supporting folks who came into the clinic. And then from there, I quickly made a move towards the end of 2019 to New York City, where I, for the past 2 years, have worked in the New York City adult homes under the lawsuit settlement O'Toole versus Cuomo. So that was extremely eye-opening, and I got to see humanity at its finest, I guess, for lack of a better word, and peer support at its finest. I mean, it was such an eye-opening experience in not the most positive way. I just saw the system, and all I could do, I felt like really kind of helpless, and I was like, well, all I can do is be the best support I can for the person that I'm providing peer service to. And that's really what I did. And then I realized I couldn't do that. It's, I'm not losing my passion for peer work, but there's so many other things I really want to do. And, as Jessica said, the statistic is 1 in 5 folks, struggle with mental health challenges sometime in their life. And then there's a lot of people out there that we might not even know. And I believe a lot of the a lot of the struggles that are labeled as mental health challenges, probably everybody has, you know, to some degree. So I've moved past the, I'm going to show you, I'm going to prove you wrong. And now I'm just really open. I really want I want to be an entrepreneur, and I want to start my own business providing peer support in a way to like really any adult. And I feel like it's been a challenging road. I've had to do a lot of different things for, you know, for my wellness, to maintain my wellness. And with the diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia, that is not always easy to do. A lot of time and work has to go into that. Yeah, I'm just looking at the time. So, you know, where I am now is it's odd, like this kind of hit me the other day. Before I moved to New York City, I thought, wow, I know who I am, and I kind of have, not at all together. It's not at all, but I know who I am. I have that part together. And then I moved to New York City, and no, I obviously didn't. And things really got stirred up, and I felt at one point I lost myself, which was not a good feeling at all. But now I feel like I've actually found myself. And I think I found like the person that maybe I was like when I was younger. I don't know. Like I have so many different passions, and that's really where I'm going now. I've accepted, I've truly like accepted and let go of you know, having a psychiatric diagnosis. And now I'm just, you know, moving forward. And Tuesday I'm moving to Albany, New York, and I'll be starting a job working on an inpatient unit, and we'll see what happens. So that's my my story in a nutshell, for lack of a better word. Thank you.
Kate, we had a question come in on the chat. Can I ask you that?
Sure.
Janet asked, when we see someone struggling, what words can we say to encourage them to seek peer support and counseling therapy?
That's a really good question. You know, sometimes, I mean, I would stay away from stigmatizing, you know, language. I would stay away from, you know, you need to do this, or, you know, I would really you know, come from a space of compassion, come from a space of love. Because if you come up from a space of your own fear and your own agenda of what you want them to do, it's just, you're going to be butting heads the whole time. You can offer what services are available. And just the important thing is just maintain your own boundaries in the process.
Okay, thank you. Jessica, do you want to introduce the next speaker?
Okay, that was fabulous, Kate. Yeah, I mean, I've known you for a while, and when you were headed off to New York City, and now you've had this whole other part of your journey to add, which is kind of amazing. So, and you continue with a lot of energy and inspiring a lot of people. So thank you for coming. Appreciate it. So. Okay, next is Michael Reichman, and he's a new peer advocate in our community coming from New York City. I so appreciate him coming in and being so enthusiastic. And this morning when I had a cancellation, he was right there. So, and he was actually, there's a podcast that if any of you are interested, you can email me or the gallery and we can get it to you. Michael's in the podcast, and it's wonderful. It's Cat's Cast, and if you'd like to hear more about the project, I'm going to plug that, and Michael's in that. So Michael, here you go. Thank you for coming again.
Thank you for inviting me, Jessica. And you know, Samantha said something when we first got on, which was that this is going to be recorded, and if you were uncomfortable, that, you know, they would make special accommodations. And my first thought when I hear that is, you know, I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, but I personally, I respect everybody's anonymity, but for me personally, I feel like it's my responsibility to be open and honest about mental health and addiction. I think that's the only way to destigmatize these situations. So I'm more than happy, to be open, honest, and willing to share any aspect of my struggle or my life with anybody at any time. I feel very, very fortunate that things turned out the way they did. I grew up in the projects in New York City in a pretty rough area during the late 60s when there was a lot of racial tension. Crime was, skyrocketing. And it was a very, very scary time. And I don't remember a lot of my childhood. Part of that is because I'm getting old, but some of that is probably, pushing down and blocking out a lot of stuff. Nothing overly dramatic, but just feelings of uncomfortability. We have a saying in AA that you don't feel comfortable in your own skin, and that was clearly my situation. And on the outside, everything looked great. My whole life, if you look just from the outside, you would see somebody who, was an all-star athlete. I got great grades in school. I had friends. I had girlfriends. I was, the kid that a lot of people, looked up to, I guess. But on the inside, I was a mess. And at the age of 12, I started getting high. And it was an immediate feeling of, I'm going to be okay. And I spent the next 34 years getting high and drinking every single day of my life around the clock. And it's amazing that I made it through all of that time. I was never arrested. I spent no time in jail. I didn't get caught. I didn't get in trouble. I just bounced around enough so that nobody ever really caught on. But inside, it was really, really difficult. I came to find out much later that I suffer from depression, OCD, ADD, and probably a host of other things that I don't even know. But the getting high and drinking, made me feel okay. And it was working sort of for 34 years. And then one day I woke up and it all stopped and I couldn't breathe. And we had to call the emergency ERS hotline of my company. I was in the financial services industry, and they recommended that I go see somebody. And my ex-wife called, and over the phone, they diagnosed me as suffering from anxiety. They didn't really know what else was going on, and they ended up prescribing medication that ultimately brought me to my knees. I had to go see somebody, and he looked at me and he said, this is somebody that I had seen many years ago just for regular, counseling when I was younger. And he said, you're going to die. And I said, why? What do I have? I thought maybe I had leukemia or Lou Gehrig's disease or something. Like, what is wrong with me? And he said, you're a drug addict and an alcoholic and you're going to die. And I said something that I grew up never knowing to say this, but in an act of desperation, I said, please help me. And he said, you need to go to rehab. And this is, many years ago, and rehab wasn't as popular. And I had no clue. And I don't remember how I even got in. I just ended up, waking up one day in rehab and with all these strangers talking a foreign language. And I didn't know what to do. So I put one foot in front of the other, stayed there for 28 days. And I came home, and they told me that if I didn't go to an AA meeting the day I got home, I was going to die. And I came home and I went to a meeting, and, and then I sought counseling. And that's when they determined that I suffered from depression, and I suffered from OCD and ADD. And, they put me on some medication, and I went to AA meetings and NA meetings, and I went to therapy, and I did the hard work, and things just got better and better. And, it came later in life. Sometimes I wish it was earlier, but you get it when you get it. And when I was in AA, the guys in the group asked me to come with them to Four Winds Psychiatric Hospital in Cross River, New York, and do an AA meeting. And when we were done, they said, "You were great. Would you like to take this commitment?" And I have a little bit of a fear of commitment. And I said, "How long?" And they said 3 months. And I said, "I can do 3 months." And I did it for 16 years. And it was the greatest thing I ever did in my life. And during COVID, I was working from home. I had a pretty successful career. I found my way, luckily into, a really good job, and I was pretty successful. And I was working from home, and I just started to realize, I can't just do this work because it makes me successful. I love doing what I did at Four Winds and helping people, and I have to do this. And I literally resigned like a week later and gave up this career that I had built for years. And it was a little scary. And I decided to move upstate because I love it up here. I'm a trout fisherman. I started painting, and during COVID, painting was like my release. It was a way for me to express the turmoil that went on inside me for my whole life, and even through COVID, working from home and being isolated. And I just decided it's time for a change. And I packed up and I moved up to Margaretville, and I luckily met Jessica through a stroke of luck, and she brought me to the NAMI people. And it's just been eye-opening and just so wonderful. And I want to spend the rest of my life, my next career, just trying to help people, because I was lucky. I don't deserve what happened to me. It was luck. It was people stepping up to help me. And if I can do that for somebody else, what's better than that? There is nothing better. There's nothing better than helping somebody who's struggling, make a positive change in their life. And my life went from almost dying 3 different times due to drugs and alcohol, and and now I have everything I ever wanted. So I feel truly blessed. I hope I can help other people. I love working with NAMI. I love working with Jessica. I love, painting and getting that stuff out, and, just want to share it with as many people as possible. So thank you, Roxbury Art Group, for allowing us to come and speak. It's an honor, a privilege, and I'm very thankful. Thank you.
You're welcome, of course. We had a chat message from Anne who says, "Michael, so many of us have used drugs and alcohol to self-medicate ourselves." So I think there's some familiarity there. Okay. Jessica, do you want to introduce the next?
Sure. Thank you, Michael. It's a relatable story, and I'm just so glad that things connected in your life, that you were able, to move forward and get and get in recovery, because I know it's work, every day, but I saw that in my aunt. I see that in myself. I mean, we all have to work every day, to keep ourselves mentally healthy. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks for being part of NAMI. Okay, I want to introduce Ariana, who is, I painted with a Kestrel, and it's just been great knowing her. And she's also an artist and a poet, and it's been a great relationship to know her, and we share a lot of things. So yes, thank you, Ariana, for being here.
Thank you, Michael and Kate. Michael, I'm glad you shared your piece about addiction, and it takes a lot of bravery to do that, because that's a big part of my story too. So I just wanted to add that. Helps me a little bit to know someone out there relates that's listening. So my name's Ariana Illawa. I'm from Oneonta, New York, and this is a little bit of my story. I'm sorry for the people that were here last Wilderness Diary Zoom presentation, because this is very much mostly what I read last time, but here we go. I wasn't diagnosed with bipolar disorder until I was 19. By then, living with untreated mental illness, I had already made a mess of my life. Drugs, cutting, toxic relationships and friendships. Just in that year that I was 19, I destroyed my first serious adult relationship, lost my apartment, wrecked my car, was fired from the job that I loved. I tried IV drugs and went to 4 inpatient facilities, the last hospitalization being the result of my first of many suicide attempts. I moved to Richmond, Virginia a little bit after that when I was 20, hoping to have a fresh start on life. For a while, I felt whole and happy with new friends and an apartment with roommates. I went off medication, not by choice. I actually left my whole bag of prescriptions in a hotel room, and the doctor wasn't able to fix that and refill them all early. So I went cold turkey off everything. And the untreated symptoms became too much for me to handle. I mean, at first I thought I was handling them because drinking helped with the side effects, but that led to other things, and I fell back into old patterns: drinking, drugs, promiscuity. I ended up in an extremely abusive relationship for nearly a year. I was isolated from my friends and family because of his violent and manipulative behavior. I was young, I was high and lost, and I truly hated myself at the time. I ended up living in a residential recovery facility. Over the next maybe year or two, I also had 4 psych hospitalizations. I spent a month in a dual diagnosis rehab later on. A short time I also spent in jail for misdemeanor drug offenses and shoplifting, another addiction I struggled with. And I lived out of my car for a while. This is a different poem that I wrote when I was about 20 that I felt like really described me and what I was going through then. One more reckless traveler controlled my merciless thoughts. Mine cannot be understood. Body speaks only in chaos. Sees the world through broken mirrors. Perspective backwards, warped, shattered. Pure deception bought the soul, a rose trapped inside its thorns. Now, thankfully, my family helped me get out of that relationship. I moved back to Oneonta and I started rebuilding my life. My life experiences left me with severe PTSD though, and triggers during therapy led me back to my old behaviors once again. A man befriended me, telling me everything I wanted to hear. I was vulnerable and naive. The next 3 years were a blur. I married him impulsively within 6 months while under the influence, and the cycle began. Isolation, no friends, broken relationship with family, was evicted from numerous apartments. He lied continuously, and I felt like I was losing my mind. I lost touch with what was real. He became abusive, even though I had made the promise to myself I would never be in an abusive relationship again. Luckily, while still in the relationship, I finally got clean and sober. I went and I spoke out to my therapist about the abuse, and with the help of my therapist at the time in the violence intervention program in Oneonta, I moved to a women's safe house and eventually into my own apartment. That was over 6 years ago. At the time, I was heartbroken because the idea of the life I was trying to build was shattered. In my experience, losing what you think you have is just as heartbreaking as losing what you do have. Even though free from the chains of that lifestyle, I was drowning from the trauma and began self-medicating again. This time it wasn't street drugs, it was prescriptions, but it was still not good for me. It was one step away from using street drugs, and I was as miserable as I had been before. The only thing I suppose was my life wasn't at risk day and night, and my freedom, but my soul was. I ended up on my own volunteering to go to a dual diagnosis program. Those are very rare in New York. I went an actual dual diagnosis. Rehab say that they are, but really that means that they will distribute your prescriptions. And so I went to Vermont and I spent 23 days inpatient. I was suicidal, and after I was let out of that, I spent another month in the partial hospitalization program. After Vermont, I started dialectical behavioral therapy in Syracuse. It was a 5-hour round trip each week for a year and a half, but it was worth it. That therapy saved my life. It changed me. I learned skills in order to be okay, to really be okay, to have meaning in my life, and change my maladaptive thought patterns and my inability to manage my emotions. I learned to cope with and express my emotions in a healthy manner, and I no longer was suffering every single moment in my life like I had been since I was 14. And now I've worked at RSS, the Rehabilitative Support Services in Oneonta, for about 6 years. And I am planning to return to college to be able to work with survivors of abuse and help people in the way that my VIP counselor did with me and other people along the way. There is a way. I want to show that there's a way through to make something beautiful out of suffering. I want to show people I was there. I know what it's like to be drowning in suffering, and you can get through it. And this is how I did it. I want there to be purpose to what I went through. It took a long time to find the right combination of medications to manage my anemia, emotional dysregulation, also another mood disorder, ADHD, and a few other diagnoses. I still struggle with depression, particularly in the winter and spring, and the long-term effects of PTSD. But I have now not self-harmed for 9 years, and I haven't used street drugs in 5.5 years. I have many resources now outside of myself and multiple helpful rituals and inner resources, including affirmations, nature, mindfulness, drawing and painting, exercise, helping others, spending time with loved ones, playing music, playing games, and maintaining a routine. In conclusion, just a very short poem of hope and self-acceptance that I wrote in the last year. If I lay here, oh, sorry, let me start over. If I lay in bed short of a winter's dusk, you think I'd rather be anyone but us? If I have yet to be that who I wish to be, you think I can't feel whole as this current me? Thank you so much.
We're going to have Bill Hayes talk briefly about our NAMI chapter, in case there's anybody out there who's looking for services, either for themselves or for their family. And then we'll go into, right after that, into a Q&A. Hopefully we're not too much over on time.
No, I think we're fine. Ariana, I have a message for you in the message chat. It says, never forget you are a miracle. I'm so glad to know you. Just so you know.
That's great.
All right, Bill, I'm going to spotlight you. So you have the stage. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm Bill Hayes, and I have the experience of both having people in my, family system who have had and who currently have some mental health issues. And I've had the experience of being a professional licensed clinical social worker for decades, with a particular focus on kids and their families. So, talking about, you look at these paintings of kids, it kind of resonates with the idea of like what lies ahead, what lies within, and it's fascinating to be connected with Jessica's work, and it's rewarding to have joined in with NAMI. So just a comment in general, all of the people on this Zoom gathering, whether it's presented or people who have joined in, we're all just folks. You're not alone. Whatever it is, you're not alone. And there are the stats of like 1 out of 5 Americans have some form of anxiety, depression, bipolarity, some kind of issues. So if you have a group of, gathering of, 50 people in a room, odds are that 10 of those folks have some inner struggle that you just don't know about, but you're not alone, and there are resources and supports available. Where there aren't resources and supports, that whether it's peers and or clinical help, by default, a number of people end up being responded to and dealt with by police, who are not trained in mental health issues. Generally, some are. Their leadership may be exceptional. The chief of police or the state police folks or the sheriffs may or may not see to it that their staff have adequate crisis intervention training, de-escalation kinds of training. We need to make sure that people have access to services and that the right kind of services. And given that there are more people needing help and fewer people in the helping roles lately, it does fall to helping ourselves and each other and our peers in whatever way we possibly can. So there is a national organization. NAMI is a national organization. There are state level chapters. Ours is headquartered in Albany area. Actually, their new office is in Menands, and I give them credit for moving from an office which was below street level and had no windows to an above ground place that has windows, and it's a relief to the people that work there to have sunlight when they're at work. Just briefly comment about NAMI, our affiliate chapter group covers Otsego and Delaware counties. We're part of the state network. We are actually one of the few affiliate groups that has no office, no staff. We're just us. And we get together on a regular basis, is what we call our steering committee, to try to do what we can to develop and hold and host support group meetings, provide information and support to the general public. We are working against stigma and the fact that we're all here talking among ourselves, being folks, and revealing there's a lot of folks just like us who need some support and help. We have specific NAMI sanctioned services that we can do here locally. One is a family support group. It's a meeting. Currently it's by phone, by conference call, and that's the first Tuesday of the month. And that's basically designed to be of help and support to family members and friends of people who are themselves struggling with a mental health issue, because there's a ripple effect here. It's a challenge to try to understand and provide support and stay resilient and be helpful. So people can access that group if those who are interested in accessing that group, and those who are interested in what's called Family to Family, which is a 8-session series over a couple of months weekly, run by people who are in the NAMI group. And it's aimed at trying to provide information, education, and a sense of support to people who really are not sure how to be helpful, or they're overwhelmed with being helpful to their family member or loved one who's struggling with their own issues. So more information about those two things can be gotten by by emailing NAMI Delaware CO, NAMI Delaware County, namidelawareco.org, and at hotmail.com, at gmail.org. Phone number for people who might want to find out further information about NAMI. You can call me, and I'll give you my private personal cell phone number, and you're welcome to call me. And I'll be glad to try to sort out what it is that would be helpful to you and see if I can give you some help in getting connected. So that is 607-267-2335. 60267-2335. And again, it's namidelawareco at gmail.org. Get in touch. Don't go it alone. There are people out there who can be helpful and supportive. So I turn it back to Jessica. Go ahead.
Yeah, and if any of you have my contact information, if you have any questions, you can send things to me. I'd be happy to get you to Bill or, you know, some NAMI member who might be able to help you. And if you're out of state, you could call and connect with me, and I'll try to help. Or, you know, sometimes we can do an interstate thing. And then of course you might have a local chapter in your community. And we'll, you know, anyhow, we're very much into supporting
I will,
families and individuals. Yes, Bill.
NAMI.org will get you the national. And namidelawareco@gmail.com. Rena, one of our members, has just posted that in the chat, so you can reference that. And I'll say that I've gotten calls from people in California and Hawaii who are concerned about a family member living in this area and wondering how to proceed to be helpful to them, what resources they're out there. So, you know, there are people who can make connections no matter where you are. So NAMI.org can get you started with a lot of those connections. Or NAMI NYS for the state chapter. So there's some questions, some answers possible that we might be able to come up with.
Thank you, Bill, again.
There was a question in the
Rena.
chat. If we'd like to start that one off with our Q&A. How do we feel about that? Janet asked, what signals or warnings should friends and family, coworkers and acquaintances be looking out for someone who may be experiencing undiagnosed mental health issues?
I think, Bill, you would be a great one to answer that.
I think that, you know, the most common mental health issues in America, if not elsewhere, anxiety and depression. Those are the most common. So that partly it may be something what they call endogenous. That's something that is maybe you're genetically predisposed to, but that's not a guarantee. So kids that are more anxious than any of their peers, kids that seem to be stuck in negative thoughts about themselves and expectations about the world, and not just in reaction to, you know, maybe, you know, their best friend moved away. That's certainly important and deserves some understanding and empathic help. But if kids seem to be stuck in feeling negative things about themselves and or overly anxious compared with their peers and stuck in those kind of positions, those are things, and that can happen, you know, as, you know, elementary school age, as well as, you know, older. I mean, the stories being told by peers today, you know, talk about being 12 or 14 or whatever, you know, that things begin to show up at that point. So difficulty sleeping, getting to sleep, sleeping too much, having troubles, particularly at this season of the year. You know, I think, you know, when we set the clocks back in the fall back, that's a time when we've got less daylight and maybe where our activity level is maybe less, and some people are more prone to seasonal affective disorder situations than others. And those who already have some issues, it's a multiplier. So exposure to daylight, maintaining activity, minimizing your carbohydrate reliance. Those are some very practical things that people can do. But there are in this area also. School-based mental health clinicians in a couple dozen of the area schools, access to services for kids with emotional difficulties is harder to come by than adults services, and adult services are hard to come by, particularly lately, because there's more need and fewer providers who are available. So disturbances of sleep, disturbance of appetite, stuck in a negative perception of themselves, and being stuck in anxious about everything or anxious about a particular thing. Certainly kids are exposed to what they call ACEs, adverse experiences. That has to do with things they have to experience in their own households on a frequent or day-to-day basis or a recurring basis, whether it's alcohol, substance abuse on the part of the parents, chaos, other kinds of things, mistreatment, molestation, severe physical threat and punishment, emotional mistreatment by being repeatedly threatened or called names or punished for, that's disproportionate to what the actual events call for, and a sense of punishment being the primary form of discipline. Discipline is not the same as punishment. A well-disciplined troops, well-disciplined organization, a well-disciplined worker is not a well-punished one, though some people do experience that. So these are things that may occur in kids' lives, and certainly in adults' lives. One of the really good supports for young adults, what's high school and college age, and people in their 20s, is a there's a particular organization that people can reach out to me and ask about, and I can give them more contact information. But it's Active Minds. It's all one phrase, activeminds.org. And it's designed by and for young people who've been through difficult times, and it's designed to be a very strong peer support network. And so activeminds.org, it's an online website, but they have all kinds of connections, resource listings, programs, services that they can tell you about. So activeminds.org, high school, college, and young adult. It's an exquisitely fine group of people targeting the young people in America.
Thank you, Bill. That's fantastic. That's a lot of information. So hopefully that answered the question. So thank you again. Samantha, do you have anything else?
If I talk too much, too fast, call me.
You're fine. We had a comment more than a question here saying creative art therapies is another effective treatment for people of all ages in here. So that was more a comment than a question, but it's a great point actually. Were there any other questions out there? If you guys want to unmute yourself to ask a question or put one in the comments right now. Anne just added something saying she is a sufferer of bipolarism as well as severe PTSD. She has a long history of family history of suicide and was lucky in her mid-40s to get the mental help I needed and continue to get treatment as well as medication. Recently, my son had a really bad heartbreak that opened the door for us to discuss mental illness and has himself found therapy. So I'm really pleased for Anne there. Are there any comments anyone would like to add to the discussion right now?
Ariana, did you have something you wanted to say?
Just something quick about the first question. I remember reading somewhere that to tell the difference between someone who's gone through something difficult and someone who has mental illness, like let's say a tragedy happens or there's a huge stressor going on in someone's life, if the symptoms subside after that stressor or tragedy is no longer a big weight in the life, then it's just a life circumstance. But if it prolongs, let's say there was a lot going on in someone's life and that's past now and things have gotten back to normal and they're still having the symptoms, then it's most likely it's going to be a mental illness issue.
Hi, this is Kate, and I just really want to piggyback on that. Also, I believe the question was, and please correct me if I'm wrong, how can we identify and help people, like young people?
Yes.
I think a big thing to remember is the average person is most likely not a clinician. So to kind of maybe not jump to like a diagnostic phase, I know for myself as a young person, that really wasn't helpful. Something that I do think is important is aggression and or anger. And, that can come out differently with males and females. So, I think that's something to be mindful of. And also, as Ariana said, young people are young people. Life happens, family happens, like there's stressors all around. So to really be mindful of, is this just like kind of a bump in the road or what is this? Just some stuff for myself. I had really weird emotions. Like, I would kind of like smile. I would have like inappropriate emotions. I don't know. Like I would, like an example is laugh at a funeral. I mean, that's just not really the best thing to do. I would do that. And I don't really know what that was, but whatever. But I found that I had a lot of anger. And then also in the school actually, kind of called my mom in because I wrote a poem. But the weird thing about the school system is that I did exactly what the assignment was. The assignment was to write about death as if you were died, like a thing on like Emily Dickinson. So we all did it. So I did it. And then for some reason, there's this big, huge, Kate's, something's wrong with Kate. So I really think it's important with the school system and the family unit to really be mindful and to keep in mind that we're not clinicians. We come from a space of love and compassion and we want to help, but then also be mindful of what that young person says, how, if we come back with defense or no, that didn't happen, it's not going to help. So just kind of, I think there's a lot involved in this. Thank you.
Okay, Eleanor added in the comments, and I think this was in relation to something Ariana said, that she thanks her for clarifying the difference between acute and chronic stress. And then I had a question from Anne that says, do you feel friends of young people who approach you about your loved one is one way we can teach children, especially teens? Anyone want to tackle that one?
Does she mean like a young person, their friend says something to a family member?
I'm not sure. Anne, are you here? Could you elaborate on your question?
Yes. What I was wondering basically was in my son's youth and his teen years, there were friends of his that he came to me about, and I feel in ways I dropped the ball, but more so for myself, I felt I dropped the ball for my son, who only recently has been diagnosed as bipolar at 26. So my question is there a way we can teach kids in what is it? I don't know what class is called anymore, but that if you think your friend is in trouble, approach somebody. If not the parent, another teacher, someone that maybe could help.
I think when in doubt, check it out. I mean, I'm not a parent, so I can't come from that space, but I know, like, as an adult, if something was if I felt something was kind of off, or, with one of my friends, I would try to find out more in whatever other way. So, again, you'd really have to navigate the relationships of the people. But I think it's perfectly acceptable. I don't know if that helps.
Eleanor says in the chat, there are so many different types of therapy one can access: dance therapy, art therapy, music, dialectal therapy, counseling, traditional psychotherapy. How do you recommend one that could be good consumers to know which therapist is best suited, given the person's preference of communication?
I think that looking at all the therapies and therapists, it is not like dialectical behavioral therapy was important for me because of my specific diagnosis. But the years I've been in therapy, it's not so much what certain therapy they do. It's being able to connect with a therapist and being able to feel comfortable. Like, there could be 5 therapists and they all do, regular talk therapy, and only one of them like directs the sessions in a way that helps you target what you need. It's really like you have to touch and go. And I think individual therapy is important, is an important core, even when you're doing other therapies like group or art and dance. So that's my opinion.
My opinion is there's a whole lot of therapies out there. First check to whittle it down. First check to see what your insurance is going to cover, or what you're willing to pay out of pocket, and then you can make a decision from there. I think it's also about if the person receiving the therapy wants to be there. If they don't, you really get out what you put in. And you get out what you put in. So if you sit there and you're miserable and you don't talk, that's you're not going to get much out of that. But yeah, there are a lot out there, and peer support.
I will say that this project, the act of painting, am I muted? I'm not sure. Okay. The act of painting, I had a lot of frustration about the mental health system, what I knew of it, and anyhow, making this art, working on it, kind of helped me work through that kind of frustration. It was actually anger that I was feeling, and then so just creating the work, it was suddenly something physical that I had, which helped me. And making, for me, is one way to kind of make peace within myself. And I think dance also is fabulous because that's very physical, and you sleep better and all of that. So there are many ways to get to that. But yeah, and I think therapy, of course, one-on-one is helpful, but therapy can also come, I think it can come from a therapist, but it can come in other ways too, if you find the right person. So it's, I think having a creative, and hopefully if it's a child, you have the supports there where there is some creativity about you know, looking for answers.
Dawn, I think you have your hand raised. Did you want to say something?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
First, I don't want to take up a lot of time, because if anybody else has any questions or comments, please signal me to stop. I'm something of an outsider. My connection with your group is through Reba, who's my sister, and who told me about this event today, and it looked very interesting to me, and it has been very, very interesting, and I appreciate what all of you have said and what you're doing. I live in the Portland, Oregon region. Rena and I both have some experience with mental illness. She has a lot more experience with than I, and she was herself a medical social worker. My background is in education, but I did spend a lot of time in my last 8 years before retiring running a college at UC San Diego, and dealt a lot with clinicians, but also with people who were in some ways sometimes more sensitive than the clinicians themselves, with working with students of concern. I've also had my personal experience with therapy, very bad experiences when I was very young, and a very, very good experience when I was older. My question has to do with what people, well, let me preface my question. I think we have, some of you have made reference to either problems, you know, poor diagnostic experiences, or issues about some other kinds of difficulties with clinical practice. And then there are other kinds of institutional issues that have to do with, you know, as you know, some of you, especially those of you who are involved in NAMI, know better than I, institutional issues having to do with hospital management or oversight, you know, administration and the insurance industry, and the impact that has on mental illness and other areas, not just mental illness. My question has to do with what people, one of the things that I've felt, and I've actually talked about this a good deal in recent years, is that we live in a society which has been hyper professionalized over the last 30 or 40 years, and where professional associations and their representatives, or academic disciplines or divisions, have a tendency to get into silo mentalities, and have a tendency to also not lack a certain degree of self-reflection on their own disciplinary assumptions and possibly biases. So my question is, what can people who are aware of this problem, and I consider myself to be, that may sound arrogant, but you know, it's actually a battle that I've been fighting within my own profession for much of my professional life. What can somebody like myself do to help with the kinds of issues that you are advocating for and engaged with?
Well, I'm not, I would, in the state of New York, there's a variety of advocacy things that you could do. I mean, if you want to take on the insurance system and the mental health system, I mean, that's awesome. Like, you go out there and that's awesome. I mean, that's great. That's what, you know, we do as advocates. Go to your county. So in the state of New York, every county has a public mental health system. So they have a county clinic. So I would start with that, see if whatever county you live in has a county clinic, especially to see if they serve, like, you know, low income folks on services, Medicaid folks. And then see if they have like a monthly meeting, because even if they have like a monthly county board meeting or whatever it's called, there is a time where the general public can come. and state grievances or listen to comments or things like that. So I would start by really getting involved in your community. Also find your local NAMI. You know, they might, you know, already have some quick, people to connect with that might, you know, be a start. But best of luck, definitely.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, like she had just said about the counties, I myself was hospitalized twice. I got nothing out of either one of them. I got nothing out of the therapist. I got nothing out of it. I did find the Otsego County Mental Health Society in Oneonta, New York. And that made completely all the difference for me. I have actually been with them 12 years now. And they do work on a sliding scale fee. They work on a no charge fee. They do what they can to help you regardless of your financial situation.
I want to
That's
say
fantastic.
that, oh, sorry. Sometimes that's the experience with inpatient hospitalization. So I'm so glad that you followed through with post inpatient treatment and were able to find something that made a difference, because a lot of people don't. And hospitalization is, you know, space and staff and finances, it's all limited. So usually it's just, okay, this person's here because they're unsafe, they might harm themselves or others, and let's get them stable. And that's been hard for me because I've gone and they just put me on a medicine, but a medicine I'm not wanting long term, or told them I didn't want, but it's something that makes it so I'm okay enough to be discharged when, you know, this isn't a long-term solution. And unfortunately, I was already, you know, in treatment. So it's like, what other options do I have? And living in a rural area, there's only so many therapeutic options with certain insurances. But yeah, so aftercare is so vital. And I did want to say earlier to Kate that I'm glad, and Jessica, I'm glad you mentioned peer work and how important that is when we're talking about different kinds of therapies. And it made me think that, well, I believe maybe it's just my point of view, but that usually therapy is thought of as a treatment option before peer counseling. And I don't know if that's because peer work is newer or what. Hopefully that changes. But I think if that's the way it is now, and so often I'm sure therapy doesn't work, especially not right away. And I would say especially with young people and people that don't exactly want to be there, especially that. I think that peer work would be an amazing option if there's struggles with the effectiveness of therapy or struggles with the person's willingness, especially because young people are probably unwilling to open up. So yeah, I just wanted to say that about peer work. It should definitely be something talked about and more often considered, especially as a second alternative.
I agree 100% with you, Ariana, because anytime, we meet someone who has had some similar experience to us, it can be a variety of experiences. You really click with that person and you build a lot of trust and a bond that is very deep. So I think as actually for young people, that's really important because they have, they want to be like everyone else. They want to be, quote, normal, whatever that is. So, I think reaching out to peers is wonderful because it gives them the friendship and the shared experience and the trust and all of that. And so I agree 100%. And that's really why I wanted to paint peers, because I saw something very powerful that would actually help anyone, and I know there are other levels of therapy. I'm not discounting that, but I'm saying peers offer something special that really needs to be pushed more to the forefront, in my opinion. So, thank you.
There's also
So
there's Families Together in the
I'll endorse that as. Go ahead, Kate.
Oh, no, sorry. I was just saying that there's Families Together in New York State as a big state organization, like, they've served the state, and also Mahaney's. So, that's also a resource. And then also a non-clinical resource for anybody is Wellness Recovery Action Planning, and that can be done on extremely practically zero money. So there's that option as well.
Great.
So let me jump in to endorse Families Together. Wonderful organization. They're designed to address, to develop peer supports and empower peers, to advocate with government, whatever level, to empower families to manage together, to support one another, and develop peer power and skill in exactly that. So as a clinician over the years, I'd love to have folks that are available to provide support to peers, peer to peer. The adolescents that I worked with, that felt like I don't want to be the only one. You're focusing on me, I'm bad, et cetera, et cetera. And it was like really hard to find some way of engaging them fully with a no, you're not alone. There's folks out there that that are like you, can support you. It's not just me as the guy sitting in an office, for paid by the insurance hour kind of thing. That's not the only thing. It's important, and that's controlled a lot by insurance companies, not by the government. But peers, and currently peers, need to be far more involved in supporting folks who end up in jail and are isolated in the jails, and they need peer supports. They need the follow-up at discharge, whether it's from the jail or whether it's from a hospital, or it's from wherever. You're not done. It's like it's like handoff to the next level of supportive care that that you can access. So absolutely, I love the idea of developing stronger peer networks, particularly in this area. So have at it, and NAMI will advocate for that. Has already advocated for that with law enforcement, for instance. So love it.
Eleanor, I see your hand is raised. Was there a comment you wanted to make still?
Oh, yes, thank you. Let me just put my camera on. So yeah, I want to thank Jessica and Kate, Ariana, Michael. This program was so inspirational and educational. I'm really appreciating hearing from Kate, from Kate, Ariana, Michael, and Jessica on your process, and just divulging that your inner life struggle to, to cope with with issues that have come up in your life. I think it's so encouraging. You've given us, I think you've given everyone who's been, watching this program hope. And Bill, you've given us, really tangible information that could help people seek out help. It makes it easy for everyone to seek the help that we need and destigmatize mental illness. I also want to say, from my point of view, I am a dance movement psychotherapist, and I want to say that in New York State, we have licensed psychotherapists who use dance, music, and art. So I want to just draw a distinction between therapeutic art, therapeutic music, and dance from dance movement psychotherapy. And I want to say that there is psychotherapy available that uses dance, that uses music, that uses art. And of course, all of us, I think, use the arts for our own self, expression. But sometimes we need to see a therapist for more in-depth work. And I know there's an issue with the fees, for to see a professional licensed therapist. But there are people who have sliding scales, like myself. And so it is a possibility that you could find a therapist even without insurance, and pay on a sliding scale. So I just wanted to put that out there, and again say thank you. Thank you for this wonderful program. It was, again, inspirational, educational, and I think it brought us together to talk about mental illness we don't usually talk about. So thank you.
Thank you, Elnora. I appreciate that.
All right. We've well run over our time, but I think it's all been exceptional information, and I don't think any of us regret spending a minute of our time here anyway. Jessica, do you still want to do your wrap up and talk about Delaware County, or have we covered a lot of what we were thinking of there?
Well, I think we've covered most of what I was interested in, but yes, if anyone needs help and would like to be part of NAMI, we'd love to hear from you. Yeah, just take care of yourself. We still have quite a bit of winter to go through, and just maintain your physical and mental health. I don't know if anyone else has anything else they would like to say very quickly, but thank you all for being here and listening.
Yes, thank you all for sharing with us. I know that a lot of that has been really hard for you, and but it's been very helpful to hear. Are there any last minute comments from our speakers today? All right, then I'm going to wish you all a good evening, and thank you for joining us. And like I said, I'm going to try and get this onto YouTube. It's a very long video, so I'm not sure if I can do it, but I'm going to try my best. Okay. And you can watch it back again and share it, hopefully, with others, and we can, spread the word even further.
Thank you so much.
And thank you to Roxbury Arts Group.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
Thank you all.
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you, Samantha. Bye.